Sister, as she alluded, she heard a very loud noise, began to feel the heat, ran for the door. The door was engulfed in flames. As she looked out the window, she saw the receptionist for the hotel who beckoned her, "You're just going to have to jump." Luckily, she's rather unscathed and able to tell us the story about what happened yesterday. That is not the case, though, for over 100 people. At this point, the body count, 105. And we're looking at about 150 family members who've been able to make the journey to Paris. They landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport earlier today and were boarded on buses to come to this small community of Gonesse, which is just 10 miles north of Paris. There they were able to meet with French President Jacques Chirac, who was able to express his condolences to them. And the scene outside of the small chapel where they held a very poignant ceremony, a small memorial, an ecumenical memorial, if you will, at about 5 o'clock local time, 11 a.m. Eastern time in the U.S. Inconsolable were the words that were used to describe some of those family members who emerged from that particular memorial. There's also memorial services over in Germany as well, some this morning and also this evening. And a little earlier, if you weren't watching Home Page, about an hour or a bit ago, we watched some buses that were coming through. Air France had said that they were going to load a lot of these victims' family members onto some of the buses if they so desired, to give them the opportunity to come to the crash site for some sort of closure. The mayor in this area had suggested it perhaps was premature, that the cleanup effort was perhaps not far enough along. It is a very grisly sight from what we understand. Mostly body parts. It would be difficult to even understand if there were complete bodies that were recovered. Some of those family members did decide to board those buses. At first count, it was about a dozen. It might be more now, up to about 30. We did see them pass through and go down this crossed white line off to the left, and where you see the blue round sign with the arrow pointing to the down. Off to the left of that is just where the incident is. When they emerged, what can I say? Obviously, unbelievable grief-stricken faces were what passed us. No words spoken, and that was probably appropriate at that point. Lots to tell you about in terms of what we can expect in the next little while, and that'll be coming up later on Home Page. Gina with the rest of the news.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Well, a federal judge in New York has approved an historic billion-dollar settlement between Swiss banks and Holocaust victims and their heirs. More than 500,000 plaintiffs around the world had sued the banks, accusing them of hoarding money deposited during World War II. A judge must still approve a plan to divide and distribute that settlement. Palestinian and Israeli leaders promising to continue working toward peace, even though they failed to reach an agreement in their 15-day summit at Camp David. Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak says he knows peace has a price, but there are some things Israel cannot compromise. And Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat telling supporters that he would not give in on their demand to have Jerusalem as the capital of their Palestinian state. Back here at home, residents of a small Minnesota town getting some help as they clean up the damage from yesterday's deadly tornadoes. The National Guard has been called to the town of Granite Falls to help pick through the rubble of a 40-block area. The storm damaged as many as 350 homes there. Look at those pictures. And now being blamed for 1 death and more than a dozen injuries. That's probably fortunate when you look at that picture there on the screen. Also in Colorado, fire crews are getting some help from the weather. Light rain and winds are helping firefighters contain about a quarter of the wildfire that has scorched 22,000 acres around Mesa Verde National Park. The ancient cliff dwellings that make that park famous have all escaped damage. And that is a look at the headlines for this half hour. Now over to you, Mika.
Gina, thank you. Popular talk show host Jerry Springer is under fire after a guest who appeared on his show was found murdered in her home. Police are now looking for the 2 other people who appeared on the show with the woman, her ex-husband, and his new wife. NBC's Frederico Whitfield has the details.
Well, my guests today say they're not going to put up with mistresses destroying their relationships.
Once again, trash-talking television.
And they're here to confront them.
Linked to a humiliating confrontation that may have led to murder. This time,
our plans do not include a home-wrecking slut like you.
A fiery love triangle took center stage on the Jerry Springer Show.
Be careful what you wish for.
Hours after 52-year-old Nancy Campbell Panitz appeared on television Monday, being told by her ex-husband and his new wife to stay away.
I hope you enjoyed yourself immensely the last 2 nights because it's the last time you're ever going to see me.
A grisly discovery was made in the Sarasota, Florida house police say the 3 shared and had argued about on the Springer Show previously recorded in May. Inside this home, a friend found the lifeless body of Nancy Campbell Panitz less than 2 hours after a judge served a restraining order against her ex-husband and his wife. Published reports say Campbell Panitz was beaten to death. A spokesperson for the Jerry Springer Show calls this a terrible tragedy and will cooperate with investigators. It's a deadly deja vu. 5 years ago, Scott Amager, a guest on the Jenny Jones Show, was murdered after revealing his secret crush on male friend Jonathan Schmidt.
I thought about it. Tying him up to my hammock.
And?
Well, it entails like whipped cream and champagne, stuff like that.
Embarrassed and humiliated, Schmidt shot and killed Amager.
Is guilty of the lesser offense of second-degree murder.
Schmitz was convicted, and a Michigan jury later ordered the Jenny Jones Show and its producer, Warner Brothers, to pay Amager's family $25 million.
Let's start to peel away these levels of reality.
Now, the Jerry Springer Show and its guests will be scrutinized for the roles played in another real-life drama that unfolded before a television audience.
He's telling you he doesn't want to be with you.
That's fine. Bye.
And then ended in murder. Frederica Whitfield, NBC News, Atlanta.
Well, coming up in our next hour, we're going to talk to a member of the group Morality in Media to talk about the pop culture of talk shows and what they mean, and also if they do, these talk shows, incite such violence.
We're also going to talk about autism coming up in just a bit, and a new movie coming to your neighborhood that if your child is autistic, he or she might particularly enjoy. We're going to explain why and discuss what autism is and how your kid may or may not get it.
Are you all right?
Yes.
She's a singer, songwriter, and small screen queen.
She had star written all over her.
And a lightning rod for controversy.
You're like the perfect couple, and you start living a lie.
She's leaving Regis, so what's ahead in the puzzling life of Kathy Lou?
The movie is Thomas and the Magic Railroad, based on the exploits of an animated tank engine. And it seems the train, with its spinning objects and wheels, is attractive to autistic children. So producers are handing out leaflets in schools and at malls telling people how to treat autistic kids. Gina.
Well, nearly 6 decades after autism was first formally recognized, the question of what causes it remains unanswered. Now, one theory which has gained popularity over the recent years is that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine can indeed cause autism. Well, that fear provoked a congressional hearing this spring. So the question now is there a medical connection between the two? Joining us from New York is Jeffrey Cowley, who wrote an article on this subject for Newsweek. Thank you so much for joining us today on Home Page.
Thanks for having me.
How did this theory develop that there is indeed a link between a vaccine and autism, one that really doctors still refute?
I think it's something that's bound to occur to any parent who experiences the regression of a child around his first birthday. You know, the MMR vaccine is something that every child gets around the age of 12, 14, 16 months. That's also the age when you first see the signs that something is not right. When a child who's autistic begins to exhibit these strange behaviors of repetitive actions or failure to respond to anybody in his environment, failure to use words. So I think it's natural that parents have started to wonder, well, is one thing causing the other? You know, this child was just vaccinated 2 weeks ago, and now I notice that he's not behaving in social ways. The problem is that this coincidence doesn't necessarily mean that one thing causes the other. And when researchers have conducted studies that have been designed really to address that question very specifically, they've found no evidence really linking vaccines to autism as a plausible cause.
As you were researching this story, what did you find in terms of helping us to understand what autism is?
Well, it's very interesting. You know, we used to think of autism as a single disorder that was completely debilitating. Our image of the autistic child is the child who can't speak at all, who's completely unreachable, who may sit in a corner banging his head against the wall in frustration. That does happen, and that's really the picture of classical autism. But it turns out that there are lots of very high-functioning people who suffer milder degrees of autism. That has just recently become apparent, and so it looks as though autism is becoming a lot more common. The number of kids seeking treatment for autistic disorders in the past decade has increased 5 to 6-fold. A lot of activists take that as evidence that we've got an epidemic on our hands, that this condition is actually becoming more prevalent. The alternative view is that we're simply becoming more sensitive to a condition that is subtler and a lot more pervasive than we ever recognized in the past.
Mr. Kelly, are we understanding any better how to treat children who have autism or, some level of the spectrum of autism?
Well, I think so. We're becoming a lot more sophisticated about the importance of recognizing these conditions early, the importance of not mistaking what is now called a pervasive developmental disorder as simply antisocial behavior. A lot of kids who in the past would have been looked at as troublemakers or bad actors and placed in programs with kids who are really antisocial are now being recognized as kids who are not misbehaving, but kids who are lost, who don't have the cognitive equipment to really understand how to function in a social environment. So with techniques like applied behavioral modification techniques, we're now able, at least at early ages, to get kids into programs where they learn by rote to carry out the social sorts of interactions that come naturally to other people. So even though a child with this condition may not be able to interpret a facial expression or to interpret body language, to intuit what another person is thinking or how that person is reacting to him, the child may be able, just by learning little rote drills, how to function in a social environment.
Very fascinating. Well, we want to direct our watchers, our viewers, to Newsweek, where you have put together a series of fascinating articles on the topic. We certainly appreciate you joining us, Jeffrey Cowley from Newsweek magazine.
Thank you.
Homepage Web and Technology editor Monica Novotny now joining us once more, this time with some web sightings on autism.
Thank you, Gina. Well, the web is a great place to start if you are researching autism. The first site that we want to direct you to is the Autism Society of America. Take a look. This site answers many questions in detail, including